Hello, I'm Maren. Welcome to the VPRO headquarters. I'm going to show you our In Europe offices. This is where we do the research. A researcher is a kind of detective in the field of journalism because we look for intriguing stories and people to interview on relevant subjects. It's not always easy, but most of the time very exciting. Let me share some golden rules of research with you. Making a documentary is all about storytelling, and a good story makes you want to laugh or cry, and above all, it moves you. You might remember it for days, months, and even sometimes years. But how on earth do you get from a factual research question to a story that moves you? The key is personalize. For example, if you read in a newspaper about 400 migrants that are going to be moved to a shelter in your town, and your story is composed of purely facts and figures, the real human story might not come across. But if you focus on the personal story of a father and his child and the way they live and the reasons behind their exile, it might grab you by the throat. Good stories are all around you. You just have to learn how to recognize them. Most of the time we in this office start with a brainstorm. During a brainstorm, you will try to get from a broad perspective to a concrete personal story. At first, get together with your group and write down your central research question. Secondly, try to formulate a sub-question or topic. And finally, try to write down as many possible personal perspectives. So for instance, your central research question is: find a difficult history in your neighborhood. As your sub-question, you choose colonialism. Then a personal perspective might be a spokesman of an action group that wants to change all the street names referring to colonial times in your village. Or the museum director who changed all the information sheets in the museum in order to raise awareness about the history of colonialism. Or a very personal story of your neighbor whose great-great-grandmother worked as a slave. The 3 W's will help you during your brainstorm. What do you already know about the subject? Why do you need to know more about it? And who might tell you a good story on the subject? You might end up with a lot of possibilities on the who, and that's good. And now try to find as many articles and read as much as you can. This will enlarge your knowledge on the subject and you will be better prepared. Of course you will search online. Let me give you some interesting tips. I'm, for example, now Googling on the first Syrian migrants in Portugal. But also try once to do the advanced search. And you can choose the language here. You can choose your region, so only to search in your country. Or you could choose a period. You can only get the articles of past year, past month, past week, and that narrows already your search. When you search for personal stories, you might at first think about your family, your friends, your neighbors, but make your circle of contacts bigger. Contact, for example, local newspapers, radio stations, members of your city council, or local historian clubs or hobby clubs. What I sometimes do, I post a question in a Facebook group. Look, this is the page of the victims of the fires in Portugal, and I just posted a question if people want to share their stories. Don't be shy, most of the people like to share their stories. So now you ended up with a lot of options on who might tell you a good story. To choose the best perspective, you can draw a mind map. Who are you looking for? What kind of profile does he or she have? And more importantly, from what kind of perspective do you want to tell your story? Take migration, for example. Do you tell the story from the point of view of the migrant? Or from the point of view of a counselor? From the point of view of the child of the migrant, the unemployed neighbor, the teacher who teaches a new language? What is, for you, the best perspective to tell your story? So now you know who to interview, but how to get in touch with someone. Our research desk will explain you how to contact someone. I find it important to state that personal contact is essential in completing your research. So once you have written someone, also try to meet someone in person or make a phone call in order to really get to know your main character. And when you talk to your main character, don't forget to ask about the personal life and interests. What kind of things does this person like? What kind of hobbies does someone have? This will create a complete image of your main character. Having this complete story will also give your crew more options to film. So now you have spoken to your main character, it's time for a summary. Try to make a plan of action in one page. First, write down again your research question, then make a summary of the subject, and then write down a clear profile of the person that you're going to interview on camera. This information is very important for your interviewer. He or she will use it to prepare the interview. There's a lot of talk about fake news these days, so I find it very important to check my sources. Look, for example, at this photo. It went viral during the migrant crisis to show the so-called invasion of Italy. However, this photo was taken in 1991 and shows a boat full of Albanian migrants that arrived in Bari, fleeing for communism. I think the most important thing is to check as many sources as possible. Now something about checks and balances. If you find a story that contains a very strong opinion about a person or a subject, then always try to incorporate two sides of the story. Look at these men. At one point in history they were willing to shoot each other and now they are best friends. Well, they still disagree about some issues.
Pada vatra, gori cijelom ovom Drinskom dolinom sa leve ove strane Drine. Ta cijela dolina gori. Dolazimo ovdje i pričaju šta se dogodilo.
Nije zapaljeno.
Pa tada zapaljeno je tada. Tada je već bilo zapaljeno.
Boljević?
Da.
Pa evo sad uđi, vidit ćeš koliko stari fasada.
Dobro, to ćemo dole vidjeti.
Ali po mojim saznanjima, dan kada je napadnuto to selo, nije ni jedna kuća zapaljena.
Who was right, we don't know. But by giving both opinions, we show the viewer that there are two sides of a story. Telling a good story is not only about preparing the interview. When you make a short documentary on a historical subject, it's often very nice to use old photos or filmed footage to complete your story. If images are older than 70 years, they're free to use. If images come from a personal archive, you will have to ask permission, but you don't have to pay royalties. But if images are younger than 70 years, they're not free to use. You will have to pay royalties. So if you want to work with images from the internet, make sure that they're free to use. I will show you how. For example, if you look for images of migrants, then you go to Settings, Advanced Search, and then here, Usage Rights. Click here on Free to Use, Share or Modify. And these images you can use freely. There are also some sites with photos on actual subjects which are free to use. For example, Pixabay and Unsplash. Thank you for watching this tutorial and enjoy making your own documentary.